Hello and welcome to 365 Days of Healing. Today's subject is fear, and why do we fear, and how important it is for us to have some fear. Fear is a mechanism within us which is for our survival. And when we were out in nature and there were predators out there, it was a very valuable thing for us to have. Or if we're confronted, say, by a snake somewhere along the way and it is going to strike us, it assists us to survive if our fear rises. We have physiological reactions when we go into a state of fear. Our heart beats faster. We start perspiring, our blood pools into our vital organs, and we become super vigilant and super aware. The adrenaline pumps through our veins, so we can either run, which is we call flight, or we freeze. And it's like we can't be seen when we freeze. And when I say freeze, I mean freeze. Your everything just shuts down and you stand stock still and you do not have a reaction. Now, fear is a very valuable thing when there's a predator there that we are trying to escape from or trying not to be attacked by. It's also valuable if there's, say, people that can attack us, and so the fear rises. And as I say, it's a survival mechanism. Now, that is hardwired into our physiological self. It is also hardwired into our brain and our emotional body. And so it fires, that reaction fires when there is a perceived threat, or when we've been conditioned to perceive that things are a threat. And I'll say that again, when we've been conditioned to believe that things are a threat. And so we are checking ourselves all the time. Now, the other side of fear is the state of love, and that is the opposite of what fear is. And that is where the endorphins run, the serotonin runs, the dopamine runs, and all the feel-good hormones are running through our system. And we go into a state of bliss and calm and, for want of a better word, love, where everything is good and valuable and wonderful in our life. Now, if we fear things physically, as I say, we have a physiological reaction. If we fear things mentally, if we fear that somebody will fill our brains with all sorts of information, which is a mental process that does not serve what we think and feel at our deepest level, then it can set up a fear reaction. And I believe that this is what happens to many children in the schoolroom. I believe that many children have a fear of being taught the way they are being taught, what they are being taught, and how they are being taught. And their behavioural reactions are such that they are difficult to order in the classroom. And unfortunately, in our world, in the Western world, and also in many other worlds, we then start to discipline the children, or we give them sets of different drugs to make them respond to us the way we want them to respond. And it sets up a fear thing in our children from a mental perspective. From a an emotional perspective, we can feel the rising of fear, shame, guilt, and all those things that are the lower levels of consciousness that comes from filling somebody with a sense of doom and gloom and fear about not being what they are told to be. And so emotionally they are suppressed. They are told they have to be this way. They are not allowed to feel that way. In the past, it was boys don't cry. Girls are just there to serve everybody else. And there were certain sets of circumstances that manipulated males and females' emotional bodies in particular ways. Now, that is changing to a point. And I'll say to a point, because the impact on us physically with our diet and with the hormones and with the herbicides and pesticides that are being used in our foodstuffs, in the chemtrails that are happening in our atmosphere for all sorts of reasons, are affecting us emotionally, physically, and mentally. And if we don't address those things, then we are allowing ourselves just to be manipulated, and through the manipulation of fear. That is what these things do to us. We fear that we have to be this, we have to be that, we have to be something else. And then out of the universities come the idea that we must be politically correct. We can't say this, we can't do that, we can't be this, we can't be that. And all of a sudden, our world is changing. There seems to be that realities that were thought of in the past are not the realities that we are perceiving today. And if we dare to say anything for or against it, there is something wrong with us. And that builds up a lack of trust, which builds up then a fear of what we might be expressing and communicating. And that causes a sense of the loss of our own direction. And when we have a sense of a loss of our own direction, that's when fear very often rises, because we don't know what we should or should not be. So there's a lot of things that contribute to these fears that are being driven through our world. Now, at the moment, we have an issue that is upon us with the advent of viruses that are deadly. And so the fear rises within us of the loss of our life and what we should do about that. And we are being fed a particular narrative, a particular agenda, that this is the only way through it and you have to do what you are told. And if you don't, then your fear can rise. Now, the opposite of fear, as I said, is love. The more you feel a sense of love, the more everything begins to operate at its optimum level. So if we're being driven towards a fear base because of societal norms that are being rolled out, then we can offset that by concentrating on the opposite of fear. Now, that's a difficult task, isn't it? Because we have this inbuilt mechanism that tells us, but we might be wrong, and therefore we're at risk, and therefore our survival is at risk. Now, how can you overcome that? I can tell you can overcome it through visualizing what it means to be in love. And I don't mean in love with anybody, just in love with yourself and in love with life in general. And start becoming excited by what is happening around you. These are all clues for our growth, for our spiritual growth. Don't be frightened of your spiritual growth. Be excited about exploring a way through this that is in what we call the natural way, because that allays our fears. Keep visualizing it. Keep seeing this bright light at the end of the tunnel that will take you to paradise. And I can guarantee you that one day that's where you'll be. You will be in the place that you perceive as paradise. And that is the way through our fear. The more you explore what love is, the more you offset fear. And so fear is an inbuilt mechanism in a 3D world. And then the higher dimensions that we go, the more loving and the more our heart opens, the more our communication opens, the more our absolute knowing opens, and the more connection we have to the source of everything. So let your fears go. Don't be too hard on yourself while you're journeying through this, and I was going to say this mud, this mire of what fear represents. Let it go. You will come out the other side of it if you then focus on the love and the joy and the beauty and the harmony, and you know that you will be looked after, the same as the birds are looked after in the world, the same as we are looked after, because we believe it, because we are connected directly to the monad, to the source of everything. And that is through absolute purity of what love is. Namaste, my friend. Enjoy your journey into love and out of fear.